Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Domestic Violence Awareness discussion panel. This discussion is aimed at providing relevant and accurate information about domestic violence and equipping our Asian Pacific American community members with accurate knowledge and resources. My name is Stephanie Sung, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Governor's Advisory Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. I will be your host and moderator today. Our commission and I would like to thank you all for taking the time to be here as we share and exchange important information and helpful advice about domestic violence, help clear up the confusion and misinformation, and answer questions from you, our dear audience and community members. Thank you to our special guests and panelists for your participation. We look forward to what you have to share. The panel discussion is organized by the Pennsylvania Governor's Advisory Commission on Asian Pacific and American Affairs. The Commission is the Commonwealth Advocate Agency for Asian Pacific and American Pennsylvanians and is dedicated to ensuring that the Commonwealth government is accessible and accountable to the diverse Asian Pacific and American communities in Pennsylvania. The commission is composed of around 30 Asian Pacific and American community leaders who are volunteers from diverse ethnic backgrounds and regions across Pennsylvania. Our commissioner, Dr. Vasu Singh, is also here with us today as a panelist. Thank you, Vasu, for making this happen. Like every one of you, I'm very excited and looking forward to the fantastic discussions with her and other three phenomenal panelists. And thank you, Vic Singh and Vijay G for your support behind the scenes. Before we start, I just want to mention some housekeeping items. To avoid background noises, please mute yourself if you're not a speaker. During the panel discussion, if you have any questions or comments, please write them in the chat box. Also, please be aware that this is a public event and to use appropriate and respectful language in the chat box. Following the panel discussion will be a Q&A session. We will convey those comments and questions from the chat box to the panelists. Now let's meet our phenomenal panel members. Starting from Andrea Search. Andrea Search is the director of the advancement for Turning Point of Lehigh Valley, where she has been part of the movement for the past 6.5 years. Andrea has been an innate passion to empower, educate, and engage others to work together to create systems of change for survivors of domestic and intimate partner abuse. Her experience as a survivor fueled her work with Turning Point to help all survivors of domestic and intimate partner abuse. Then let's go to Dr. Vasu Singh, MD. Dr. Singh practiced family medicine in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. She has proudly served and provided primary care to the community of Lehigh Valley for the last 2 decades. Her practice is like a home to many multi-generational families, including a large South Asian community. She has played a key role in helping the community during the pandemic via her social media platform, virtual meetings, telehealth, and in-person care. Dr. Singh provides awareness about the pandemic and COVID-19 vaccines to many patients on a daily basis. She also works as a medical director at the UPMC Health Insurance Division and is a commissioner on the Governor's Advisory Commission on Asian Pacific and American Affairs since December 2019. Then it's my great honor to introduce Dr. A.K. Vijaya Krishnan, Counsel for Community Affairs from Consulate General of India, New York. And we have a fourth panelist, Denise, which may have some tech issue to join us. Once she joins us, I will introduce her to you. It's my great honor to join this very important panel discussion with 4 distinguished experts and panelists. Thank you very much for spending your time to share your expertise with us. Here is our first question. It goes to Andrea. The domestic violence is such a broad term. What does it mean? And what are the types of domestic violence? Thank you.
Thank you for that warm introduction. So, and if you heard in my bio, and actually in our agency, we've moved away from the term domestic violence, and we now say domestic and intimate partner abuse, because when people heard the word domestic violence, they would associate it with only physical abuse, which, you know, is a type of domestic violence. It's the one that people think of the most, you know, the bruised eyes, you know, people wearing long sleeves to cover up bruises, you know, broken bones, going to the emergency room. So there is physical abuse, and that, you know, we cannot underestimate the physical violence and the effects of a physical, the pain that it causes. But there's the emotional abuse and the verbal abuse as well that people underestimate the effects it can have on the whole, you know, the person as a whole body, whole mind, the stress it causes on somebody. So, you know, the name calling, the put downs, the gaslighting, the, you know, just the overall, just making you feel less than you are. And it's that power and control. So in the world of abusive people, you know, power and control is that common thread that we see. They want that power and control, and how they assert it. And, you know, they use different types of abuse. So you have physical, emotional, verbal, you know, there is sexual abuse where people say, well, we can't have that if there's a relationship where people are, you know, they're together, they're with each other, they're married, they're dating. But there is, I mean, you can still have that in a marriage. You can still have that in a dating relationship. So, you know, it's people who maybe they don't want to have a child right now, and they're forcing them, you know, off of their birth control, or forcing them to do things that they don't want to do in order to get something else. So we do see that, you know, a lot more stories than are really out there that you guys hear. The one that's common, 97 and 99%, depending on which studies you look at, is financial abuse. So when people say, like, why don't people leave? Financial abuse. I mean, it is really hard for somebody to get back on their feet. If I were to say to, you know, anybody who's listening, if I were to say to you right now, with the money in your bank account, with what you have, if you had just get up and go right now, would you be able to have, you know, money for first month's rent, the first, you know, the rent, the utilities, you know, to get out and move on your own? And, you know, if you had kids, if you had, you know, animals. So, you know, financial abuse is really, it's tough. So we have financial abuse, and even in communities of faith, you know, there is spiritual abuse as well, where they might take scripture, they might take, you know, the word and use that, and maybe twist it and use it as well, you know, against somebody as well. So, you know, and all that combined, because you can have all of that combined as well. And I think, you know, a lot of times what we hear on our helpline, people think they're the only ones going through their situation. And yes, their situations they're unique. Their stories are unique, and I will never take that away. But the tactics that the abusers use, they are all too common. They are common. They are so common. It's that power and control, that manipulation, the isolation. The tactics they use are very common. And, you know, when people realize they're not alone and there's other people that are going through what they're going through, and they realize that we're here to listen, not judge, and we're here to help, I think it really puts their mind, it puts their mind at ease. Even if they are from the immigrant community, they're undocumented, it doesn't matter. We're not calling ICE. We're not, you know, we were here to help. We have relationships with, you know, HIAS and PERC, and we will help somebody get back on their feet, if whether it's counseling, safe house. I know we have to get into that later, but, you know, definitely, I think the biggest thing is just letting people know they're not alone.
Thank you so much. The explanation is very eye-opening. There's so many different types of the domestic violence, and the specific reason can be very diverse, but they all share some common characters and common ground. Thank you so much. And the next question, I want to go to Dr. Singh. As a primary care physician, what's your experience with domestic violence and how to recognize domestic violence? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I feel that I'm very privileged to interact on a very wide variety of people on a daily basis. The families and the people and patients that I care for come from very, very diverse ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, different religions, people speak different languages. All socioeconomic status as well. And I don't think so that anyone of anybody or any place is free of domestic violence. I see that across cultures. I grew up in India. I came to the United States, say in mid-20s, and I thought that I just left domestic violence back home because I grew up seeing a lot of violence in the community and among family members and also among friends. And as a physician, I did see a lot of violence there. So I thought that maybe this is the norm, the community where I lived in. But I was surprised when I started practicing here in the US. I was appalled to see that this beast is not uncommon to any culture. Everybody, everywhere it is prevalent, domestic violence is prevalent. And I see sometimes children that, children are also indirectly, they are also impacted by domestic violence as well. Now, going to your second question, how to recognize. So I think, yeah, it's unless somebody is beaten up black and blue, it's very easy for anyone to recognize. But many times people do not present like that. When it takes several attempts and it takes a lot of time for people to actually speak up and to come out of and share what they're going through. And as I said, that I'm in a very unique and a very blessed position to have long-term relationships with people over a decade, 15 years or so. So sometimes people do present in a very subtle way. And when I talk to people, I think many people, they have symptoms of anxiety, depression, insomnia, and people fatigue, for example. And when you dive into a little bit, then you understand the whole problem. And I, again, as a family medicine doc, I do see the whole family. So I think that also puts me in a very good position to kind of figure out the family dynamics and to make a conclusion that, okay, well, there is something not right going on in this family dynamics. And you start probing and then you ask that one question and people will be, they are in tears. So I think it's a skill over the years. We do get better at recognizing those symptoms and those patients who are undergoing domestic violence. And a lot of times children that we see, I see that sometimes children's personalities, you can look at the kids and tell that these are kids who don't fall under normal Bell's curve. They have something very peculiar about their personalities, and you ask appropriate questions, and we find out that these children are directly or indirectly, they are the domestic violence, they're victims. So I will stop there because I can talk and talk and talk. So let's move on to the next question.
Thank you. Actually, I want to ask one question to the audience. July is a special month. Has anyone know what's the month for July? It's something related to mental health. Anyone? You can put in the chat. Okay, I give 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the answer is July is the Minority Community Mental Health Month. And there is a very obvious disparity in the terms of physical health and also mental health. And here's the question I want to ask all the panelists, if you have anything you want to share. Do you think mental health problems and domestic violence are related? Please feel free to jump in. Thank you.
So I can take this question first, and absolutely, Stephanie, and this is again something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. These substance abuse, mental health problems, I think and domestic violence, they are intertwined and they do overlap. So I see that mental health problems are certainly a huge, they are a very important variable when it comes to domestic violence, because people sometimes, your own environment, how you grow up, and if you were a victim yourself, I think they could be, depressed, and people could be, so mental health, in other words, plays a huge role in domestic violence as well, and of course, substance abuse. So I'm a firm believer that anytime we discuss domestic violence, we need to address mental health and substance abuse at the same time as well. Andrea, you may want to add.
I was going to say any kinds of mental health, even with drugs and alcohol. I mean, it does heighten sometimes the intensity of domestic violence, although it's not the reason why people abuse. I mean, at the end of the day, it is about power and control. But even going to even someone's mental health, a lot of times people are, I don't want to say misdiagnosed, but you could be presenting, like you said, with it could look like one thing, and, and you could be diagnosed, but it's really a result of being abused. It could be a result of something else. Even turning to drugs and alcohol, that's even, that's a coping skill. So I think the trauma and the trauma response from witnessing abuse, receiving abuse, and even mental health. I mean, there was a quote, and I don't remember the exact quote. I wish I could remember at the top of my head, but it was talking about mental health. But the crux of it was that the person who was the abuser and the person who was the survivor, the victim, that the person who was abusing intentionally, they knew exactly what they were doing, but they didn't do it to anybody else. So there is that also awareness on behalf of the abuser as well, even if they do have mental health issues, that they are intentionally, and they know what they are doing with that power and control, to their partner as well. Although, if they do have mental health issues, it does complicate things, and I agree with, Dr. Singh too. I mean, people can present with nosebleeds and headaches and stomach aches, and, until you ask that question, is there is something else going on? And it might just take one person in the emergency room, one family doctor to say, what else is going on? And we've had people say, well, it just, my doctor actually asked, nobody ever asked before. So I think that's important as healthcare professionals and even people in the community. It's uncomfortable sometimes to ask, but to ask those questions like, are you okay? What's really going on?
And I'm just going to add to that because I have tons of patients that I've served in the last several years where they do see, they are frequently seen at the emergency rooms complaining of panic attacks, anxiety, palpitations, and they get $1 million workup done to rule out heart attacks. But in fact, when you ask those questions, it is a different problem that's giving rise to those symptoms. So yes, I mean, it is concerning, and people do present in very different ways and manners. Dr. Daniel, do you have anything to add? Because I know you're an expert.
Hi, Dr. Singh. Sorry, I had a call from a patient, so I missed some of it. But, I think in general, domestic violence, it's a really important issue to address in the Asian community and immigrant communities in general. There's a lot of social pressure to kind of keep things together and not, the concept of a broken home or a broken family is very stigmatized, and I think we need to promote awareness of things happening. Things can be better for people. You don't have to handle it in a certain way, and you don't just have to go along with, advice that people maybe are elder people or people think that they're doing a service to the community by helping people adjust. But some things you should not adjust with. If someone is physically exploiting you, or even name calling, and just that creating an environment where you're not psychologically safe, it's not good for you, it's not good for the children, it's not good for anybody. And taking interventions and maybe asking for outside intervention, sometimes it gives even the abuser the opportunity to take a step back and say, it went this far, and what do I need to do? Sometimes people learn from their mistakes. So you're denying yourself the psychological safety, and you're denying this other person the opportunity to grow as a human being by just kind of sweeping it under the rug and hoping it gets better.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for.
No, I was going to say too that people always think that we have a safe house shelter, but we also encourage people, they can stay in their relationship and still contact us. So they can be, I heard a pastor say one time at a church, like, it's okay if you're safe and separate, so you can be safe, separate, and then you can come back together, So figure out what it is you need for your relationship. I mean, you take that time. So we're not saying like just completely break off and leave from the person you're with. You can figure it out, but if it's not healthy and it's not working, and, you are in danger and it's really affecting your health as well, then you really need to reconsider your options as well. And, we're here, and also the Pennsylvania Coalition, which can connect you with any of the agencies in Pennsylvania. I think that's a wise option as well to reach out to.
Great. Thank you so much for all the fantastic suggestions and information sharing. And special thanks to Mr. Vijaya Krishnan again for joining us from New York. So this question is to the council. In situations of domestic violence, when and how do people of Indian origin connect with the consulate? And how many cases are reported to the consulate of the India annually, if there's a data? Did you notice an increase or decrease in the numbers of the cases during the pandemic? Thank you.
Hi, good morning to all of you. Like domestic violence, yes, we had a lot of cases. People generally, we have got our helpline number, which is 347-721-9243. That is a general helpline number. But of domestic violence, they are not aware that the consulate is there to help them out in such cases. It is out of the house. Then she's taken into, the police helps her out, or any NGO helps them out. After that, those people get in touch with the consulate immediately. The lady is also not aware. So first thing I want everyone in this thing to be clear that the consulate violence victim out here. So it is basically for the Indian, when any such cases come to our notice, as well as this circulated, my cell number is 917-244-1905. And the email is mawyork@mea.gov.in. This should, I think this should be circulated among all the Indian community as well, organization as well. Well, how do people get? They do get in touch through this email ID as well as this my contact numbers which I have given, and also any people who come to know about this domestic violence, inform us that so and so person is an affected person. So immediately we find out what is the problem it is. We try to get in touch with the parents. When the woman is a victim, she doesn't react immediately. I mean, whenever it happens, it should be nipped in the bud itself. So what happens is, when most of the cases which I have come across is the woman has been violated for more than years. And I would say that it's physical abuse totally, being beaten up. This takes being quite to such a long time. And finally, the husband knows that she is not reacting to anything. He starts checking every Monday, he kicks her out of the house. The lady is in a very distressing situation because he has taken over her passport, credit card, bank accounts, her mobile phones, everything. He has taken it away from her. She's totally in a helpless situation. Once we get to know about it, we initially, yes, if she is filing a court cases going on, or divorce cases on, definitely the consulate is there to help them with the legal assistance also. We can give a small one-time legal assistance. We have got some attorneys in our panel as well. We have got NGOs in our panel as well. We approach them, we pay them to fight the case for the lady. If the lady wants to go back to India, to her parents in India, again, we'll get all the flight tickets as well, if whatever is possible, and then send her back to her parents. Well, as far as the number of cases are concerned, I cannot give you the exact figures as such, but we do get a lot of cases almost on a regular basis. In the last 1 year, I have been 1.5 years, I have been here when the pandemic had started, when I reached here. Of course, whenever I go to the consulate, the first thing in the morning I see is some domestic violence case or other when I open my mail. So it was really distressing in the initial stages. It is still distressing to hear when a man, God has made man physically stronger than the woman. So he knows that he cannot, whenever the girl, in today's world, the woman as well as the men are equal. They have got equal rights everywhere. The lady has to stand up to her rights. We have cases where a lady has been abused and she was not willing to come out and speak out. We were there to help them out. The lady says, no, I will not speak against my husband. We had to get the others also involved, or the family people also, family elders also had come out there, and finally it was sorted out. But the thing is, the lady has to speak out. You don't stop a crime in the beginning, it will just start getting bigger and bigger. That's just what has happened. Ladies have been here who have been physically abused, and for more than 2-3 years, they have kept quiet. And one fine day, he had taken out whatever earnings, everything, and left her out on the street with nowhere to go. The lady is not even aware of where she has to go, what she has to do, whom she to approach. So wherever is there, get in touch with the community. Community people will have to take part in community events as well. All these people and anyone getting aware of any Indian national being in such sort of a distressing situation, you can easily get in touch with the consulate. The number again, I will repeat my number. Cell number is 917-244-1905. Please do circulate this number. I'm available 24/7, even on holidays or anything. I'll definitely pick up even at late night. And more time, the ladies' mobile phones are also not with her. She has to come out of that, take time out somewhere. When the husband goes out, she comes out suddenly and picks up the phone and rings up and speaks her. I'm so and so place. I'm in such sort of a situation. Please help out. With this thing, we have to go out there, reach out to them to try to help them out. And during COVID times, is there an increase? I would say I didn't see a drastic increase as far as the cases which have been reported to the consulate. The number of cases is a slight increase, I would say. Only a very there to help them out. They can get in touch with families in back India as well, and also their friends, and we can help them out in any way. These are my, like I have given you my contact number as well as that email ID. All of them are free to contact us anytime, any day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a commitment, 24/7 commitment. Thank you so much for all your support and service for the community. The three of the panelists, you're all doing such amazing work to serve and help the Asian Pacific community every day. So do you think domestic violence is more prevalent among Asian or South Asian communities as compared to other communities? Thank you.
No, I was gonna say, like Dr. Singh said before, it's all communities the same. It's just some communities don't speak out as much, so therefore it's not reported. I know with this community in particular, what we have seen and we've run into is when somebody is fleeing and they try to get a PFA or they're leaving their husband, that if they try to go back to their family, they're threatened of being disowned, or their family doesn't want them because they're supposed to stay with their husband. I remember vividly one case where, the husband was threatening to kill the wife and, a mercy killing and all this stuff. And in the courtroom, she ended up going back home with him and dropping the PFA because the father said, if you don't go back home, you don't have to worry about him killing you, I'll kill you. So so I think that's where, we find a lot of times people are afraid to come forward because they don't want that stigma with their families as well. And you guys, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's just what I've seen working here.
Yeah, and I agree with Andrea. So I don't see any difference, Stephanie, in terms of numbers, but again, from my own personal experience, I see that there's a slight difference in different communities. New immigrants, they're just women because they're not educated, they don't have financial resources, they're not very confident, and that just makes them even more vulnerable because even if they are the victims, I feel that they don't have, they just cannot stand up and talk because they're completely dependent on their partners, spouses, and families. And of course, there's a social stigma, taboo, and a lot of those issues. So I think financial independence is certainly, that's one of the very important factors. But I just see that, I see women coming from all different socioeconomic status. I see very highly educated women who just sort of, because they just don't feel that this is a good option for them and they keep trying for several years. And these are very well-educated, well-paid women who have, a very good standing in the community, but they still take abuse because they just don't think so that there's anything better that they can do. And it takes years up until they are finally ready to speak up. So I think, yeah, it's prevalent, it's everywhere, and no community is immune to domestic violence. And I don't know, Mr. Vijayakrishnan, what's your opinion, but you may want to add to it.
No, I don't think it is only prevalent among this Asian community. I think this domestic violence thing is prevalent everywhere. All communities are in each and every community. You find this sort of domestic violence. It is basically the way showing his superiority, his physical power. She knows he's physically stronger. He doesn't want to accept that his wife knows more than him or better than him. It is very difficult for a man to accept to that conditions. So there are people who don't accept to this would resort to this physical violence as well. So I think this is prevalent among all communities as well. Thank you.
I agree. And I just want to ask you a quick question, Mr. Vijayakrishnan. If do you have any information on your website if somebody wants to say reach out to you, or do people reach out to you via one general number? Is there any section where we can
Yeah, actually, I was just putting in the chat box. I was giving my email ID and cell number. I'm just typing it out in my chat box. So I'll be giving that email ID as well as the contact numbers where people can directly get in touch with us. So it will be either me or my staff who will be picking up those phones. So you can bring up at any time 24/7. I'll be putting it on the chat box itself, the details.
Sure, but maybe moving forward, if we can have some information on the website itself, where a hotline.
On the website, if you go onto the website itself, it is there on our website itself. It is there on India in newyork.gov.in. There is one community affairs. If you go to the community affairs over there, it is given, details are given.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. So thank you so much, because that is important. Many people may not have access to your phone number or your email. So if they go on the website, I think that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that.
And
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Andrea.
And we also see, in different communities, but we also see it across,
Yes.
we see men that are being abused as well here. And we see, people from the LGBT community, especially with immigration, like say somebody marries somebody from somewhere else and maybe they won't turn their papers in. And then they'll threaten to have them deported if they, they don't do what they say or ask, or, maybe it is a financial abuse situation, or maybe it is, so, I know, some communities might see that it is, and we definitely see that it is a lot more, heterosexual females as well, but it is across, all communities, and that includes all genders as well. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. And I see Denise is on.
Thank you. And
Thank
I
you so
have in
much.
fact seen that among Asian community as well. Like males, the males were the victims of domestic violence. And it's, I don't want to go through the cases, but very, it's prevalent as well.
Please allow me to introduce Denise to all the audience. Denise Scotland is Senior Training and Technical Assistant Specialist. She has been in the movement for close to 30 years, first as a legal advocate at Turning Point of Lehigh Valley, before working for the PA Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're just talking about the situation of domestic violence in the Asian community. So the next question to all of you is, what are the common barriers you have seen to outreach communities like Asian communities to provide the support or collaboration on the domestic violence? Thank you. Please feel free to jump in.
So I can start and say that a lot of our programs have indicated that they don't have really good connections with folks in this community. So they're not collaborating like on the statewide level as much. We're working some with the commission now, but not working with local communities, local churches that might be specific to this community. I think the community as a whole if they are undocumented, have a concern about coming in for our services. And I want people to know that all of our services are free and confidential, and we do not make any reports about whether folks are documented or not. So the services are available. And if there's a language barrier, all of our programs use Language Line. So that sometimes has been a barrier in the past as well.
And I would say the same, for us, it's the connections. I know we have stronger ties with other people, other groups in the community, and sometimes it's just, there's certain communities where there's more male leadership, and I feel that there's a certain stigma as well as information getting out. But we've been making some strides as well, so I feel people are being more open to the information, and sometimes we have to change and be open to changing how we put information out there. So we will listen and say, okay, you don't want us saying this, so how can we say it? Or what do you prefer that we say? Because we also don't, we want to take an opportunity where there is an opportunity. So we'll work with, we'll change some language, or we'll make it, we'll adapt what we can adapt as much as we can tailor it. But we want to work with, and we want to also help. But there is that stigma out there as well. So I think that has also, and that fear that people have as well of having us available. Because I feel like it's almost, when we're around, like when I used to go to the high schools, they used to call me the breakup lady, right? Because they thought I would come and break up everybody. Here come, because now she's telling everybody that their relationship's unhealthy. So I think people think that if we come in, that there's going to be, high rates of divorce, or there's going to be turbulence, or we're going to turn, their faith community or their community upside down. And, we want people to have safe and healthy relationships. I mean, that's what we want at the end of the day. If you stay, if you leave, whatever it is, we're here to support whatever the community needs, whatever the individual needs, we're here. So I just want people to know that we're here to help, not hurt.
Thank you very
Yes.
much. Oh, go
And
ahead.
I agree with both of you that, the collaboration part is missing. Because to begin with, the South Asian communities are very quiet. And as I said, the newer immigrants, they're powerless. Not all, but some. So that becomes a huge problem. And then people are just shy to speak up. And there's so much disconnect between the organizations like Turning Point and, the PCADV in the state of Pennsylvania. And what Mr. Vijayakrishnan just mentioned, I mean, half of those things were all news to me. And I think that I know something, but looks like I need to do a lot of homework too. So I think, yes, we need to build some collaborations and try to reach the most vulnerable communities.
And the collaborations at the local level are the most important, because then you can make a warm referral and can create relationships that make folks that are survivors or victims of domestic violence feel like, well, if Vasu is recommending them to me, then I know that they are a good person to go speak to. Information on PA Safe Law Helpline. And this is where if somebody is undocumented or is an immigrant and they have issues with domestic violence or even sexual assault or other civil legal issues, they can contact this helpline and get connected to local resources. So it's important that we know what those local resources are so that we can make those referrals to individuals, right? If we don't know what they are in a community, then we can't make that referral. So making sure that folks let their local domestic violence program know, because then those advocates will make sure that they pass that information on up to us at the coalition.
And even if there's, monthly meetings that, people have on the local level, invite us. We would love to come. We would love to be part of it. Even if it's just, twice a year, invite us, let us be part of it. We would love to come speak, listen, collaborate, and see how we can work together. So I think, sometimes we don't know, like, Dr. Singh didn't know, right? So sometimes we don't know either. So, reach out to us, reach out to PCADV and ask. I know Prachi's on here somewhere, and she's with the SIA organization, the SIA group, and, they had reached out about donating, and they have been phenomenal every week, bringing donations and, items that we need. And we've connected with our group, which is also part of Jersey. And even some of our residents who see them coming in to bring donations and recognize, like, hey, that person looks like me. Like, where do you worship? Or, and it kind of like, it brings that connection of community. We want everyone on our board, on our staff, to look like the clients we serve, to look like our community. We don't want anyone to feel like they don't belong here. So we want everyone to know that they're welcome. And yeah, any kind of collaboration. I know, with the IAALV, if you have meetings, let me know. We will attend. We will be there.
I just have a quick question. What about the cost, the legal cost? If I refer somebody to you, to any of the organization, will that be covered? Or will the victims themselves have to be paying for those things?
It kind of depends. Some of our programs have funding for civil legal representation. So for protection from abuse orders, divorce, or custody, they have funding for that. Not every program does. There's only like 16 programs throughout the whole state. But a lot of our programs have relationships with legal services to work with those folks, with immigrant attorneys, and then some have access to pro bono attorneys. But it really varies throughout the state, which is why I saw that there's information in there about how to find your local domestic violence program in the chat. You can put in your zip code or your city, and then you have to make the call to find out what breadth of services they actually have, because it really does vary throughout the Commonwealth. We'd love to have a civil legal representation project at every single program, but that's not possible at this point.
With PCDV, they have the PA Safe Law, where anybody can call and get free legal advice. At Turning Point, we're fortunate to have a relationship and a partnership with North Penn Legal Services, so we can make a referral. They have trained domestic violence attorneys that can, fight on behalf of our clients. There are some criteria. It is income-based. If not, we can refer them as well. But, we have pro bono as well. Like Denise said, we know people. So, we really do advocate. I mean, all of our titles, they didn't used to have advocate, but now all of our titles have the word advocate behind it. Well, except mine. But sorry, I just realized that. But yeah, we're all advocates. We all answer the helpline. We all, whatever somebody needs, it's everybody has individual needs, and they're all different.
Sure. And another quick question that I have, does anyone know if we have any South Asian organizations that are helping our domestic violence victims? I know of a few, but is there any database or is there any list that somebody might have come across, or locally, state level, or maybe Mr. Vijayakrishnan, you probably are more familiar with that. You're muted. You're muted.
On our website itself, we have 6 NGOs, 7 NGOs which are in touch with the consulate itself. So whenever we receive any such thing, we refer them to the NGOs who are already empaneled with us. We have got our it's available on our website as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So that's one resource, and we can have everything there. That's good.
And I know I joined late and we're trying to plow through the questions, but I did want to say that in spite of all these barriers, we are seeing folks from this community. And I dropped the information in the chat of how many victims all of our programs served. So 56,444 through May of this year, from June of 20. And then In this year, there were 490 victims that identified as Asian, and that's self-identification, and 51 that self-identified as Pacific Islander through May 30th. Again, from our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. So in spite of these barriers, there is hope. I wanted to share that folks are reaching out to us.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, Denise. Thank you so much for sharing that data. It's excellent.
Thank you
And-
so much for sharing, and thank you so much for all your commitment and service to our community. So the last round of the question is to all the panelists, especially to the 3 panelists coming from the organization and council to provide the service to the victims. So would you please share with us, how do victims can contact your organization, and how does your organization help them? I would like to start with Mr. Vijaya Krishnan. Beside the information of the resource on the consulate website you just mentioned about, how is the consulate of India helping the India diaspora? Thank you.
Well, as far as this domestic, as far as this domestic violence, I have already given you, I have put it in the chat box itself, that email ID and as well as the contact number. So whenever we can, first thing is what we do is, like I have said earlier also, we can provide financial assistance to the man for fighting if there is a domestic violence court case going on out here, we can help them out through our, again, help is only through our empaneled NGOs and empaneled attorneys out here. So we get our attorneys to get in touch with the victim, and then they will file the case on their behalf. There's only a particular amount which we can pay. A fixed amount is there for helping out the victims in such cases. And as well as, well, if the lady wants to go back to India, yes, again, we can arrange for her going back to India. To the flight charges, we can pay her flight charges and send her back to India to her parents. And any other, if she even when she goes to India, if she files a divorce petition in India, that through the court, if she can send all the documents to us, we will send it to the husband for him to appear in court. She can get his, like, for cancellation of his passport as well. She can file a case in India itself. There's a link on our site as well, so she can go over there. She can file for a case against her husband. We'll be taking necessary actions on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise, Andrea, anything to add? Thank you.
I was just going to add, so if you're in Pennsylvania and you don't know who your domestic violence agency is, you know, Denise posted PCADV, their national, the hotline as well that you can call. I'm just going to put our little blurb for Lehigh and Northampton County. So if it's Lehigh and Northampton County specific people, not anywhere else, but Lehigh and Northampton, that's our helpline number. And I did give a heads up to our helpline as well. You know, after this recording goes out as well, if, you know, if we do get an increase of calls as well, you know, for the language line, and just to give people a heads up. And we did see, so last fiscal year, and we're putting our numbers together for this past one, but in the 20 to 21 fiscal year, we saw 3,186 survivors here from Lehigh and Northampton counties, and 15 of them self-identified as in this category. We did have a lot that did not identify. So, and I think there's some people that just, they don't feel comfortable also identifying, but I'm hoping the more we work with our staff, the more we work with people as well, that they will be, sometimes they don't feel comfortable giving that information. I mean, we don't use it for any other purpose except for, you know, statistics or for, you know, reporting back to our coalition. So I think it's important for people to know, like, we're not gathering like the secret information. We're doing it for statistical purposes. If we see an increase, like a huge jump, then we know that, hey, maybe our outreach efforts are working, or maybe we need to do more outreach if we see a spike in a certain community. But during COVID, we definitely saw a lull at first during quarantine, but then after, quarantine was lifted, we did see an increase in our services, and we got very creative with how we were doing our services. But we do have virtual, so if people are not comfortable with coming into us, we now have hybrid. They can do telehealth. They can call us on the phone anytime. They can come in to see us. So we have a variety of options that people can reach out to us. One thing that we did during quarantine, which I think is important that people can do all the time. So say their phone's being monitored, or somebody checks the phone bill and sees what number they're calling, and they don't feel safe calling PCDB, they don't feel safe calling us, they can call a friend they always call, a relative they always call, and have that person three-way them to call us. That way it looks like they're on the phone with a friend or a relative that they always call, and they're three-waying us, and that person won't know. So I think it's one of those safety things that we want to make sure that if people are calling us, that if they might be tracked or somebody's checking the phone bill or monitoring, that we want to also make sure that they're safe.
Thank you.
Yes, and we don't work directly with victims other than for the PA helpline, Safe Law Helpline. So we would make the referral to the local program.
Thank you.
And I do see that Stephanie added the information in there about how to help folks, what signs of abuse to look like, so that if you're that friend that Andrea is talking about and you recognize those signs, you can make that offer to be the person to have the call go through, to come to their house to make the call, to pretend like they're there for the day, to do some childcare while they go to court, all of those kinds of ways to meet the person where they are and provide support that they need.
Even doctor's offices, we've had people call from their doctor's offices. Any place where it's normal for people to go, that it wouldn't kind of raise a red flag as to why they're there. So it might take a little creativity to call us or to reach out for help. But even if it's a call to say, hey, is this abuse? We get that. Am I crazy? Is this abuse? I don't know. Should I leave? Should I stay? What should I do? Well, tell me about your situation. Like, we're here to listen. So I think it's important for people just to have somebody listen, and we give options. We don't give advice. We don't tell people what to do. They're the author of their story. They know their abuser better than anyone. And I am in no way going to ever put someone's life at risk by telling them what to do. I will give them choices and, empower them to do what they choose to do. But at the end of the day, that option is up to them.
Thank you so much for sharing all the great resources. And there are a lot of links and hotline numbers in the chat box, and our tech team, we will work together to arrange all the information and resource, and also put in the video, which we will share with the community later. I would like to express our sincerest appreciation to the 4 amazing panelists. We are very honored to have you to share your knowledge, your expertise, and your thought with us. And from all of us on the Pennsylvania Governor's Advisory Commission on Asian Pacific and American Affairs, we would like to thank you, our audience, for taking the time to attend this panel discussion. We will keep working on this very important cause with our partner organizations, including our panelists and every one of you. Together, we're strong. Thank you, all of you, very much. And stay safe. We wish you a good day. Thank you.